we've been talking about this autopen controversy since last week. The autopen, of course, is a device that put the credit or blame where it belongs, was developed by President George W. Bush. And by all accounts, he didn't use it at all. In fact, Bush was kind of infamous that on at least a couple of pieces of legislation, he flew all the way back to Washington, D.C. from wherever he happened to be to sign a piece of legislation rather than do it remotely. Barack Obama did use the autopen to sign something when he didn't want to come back from Hawaii during a vacation to be able to sign a bill in Washington, D.C. But I thought I'd put the question to Seamus Bruner, who's Director of Research at the Government Accountability Institute. Seamus, welcome to the program. And does this announcement from President Trump that he considers all of the pardons that Joe Biden had issued to be void, vacant, and of no further force or effect, does that have any practical applications right now?
Hey, Lars, it's great to be with you. It's hard to say. I'll leave it up to the lawyers. It's definitely, I'm sure, going to go to the Supreme Court. Heretofore, the pardon power has been absolute. There were a lot of pardons that Bill Clinton made that were suspicious accusations of selling his pardons. We have never been in a situation where the president was non corpus mentis, not in his right mind. And so this is really, it's a constitutional crisis of sorts, especially for the Bidens. If he didn't know, here's the most important point about the autopen, because like you mentioned, it has been used by previous administrations. It's been deemed legitimate. But when the president isn't in his own right mind, if he doesn't know the things that the autopen was signing, we need to get to the bottom of who was putting his signature on documents, which documents were they putting Joe Biden's signature on, and did he know about it? If he didn't know about it, I don't see how these pardons can stand.
Well, let me give you the one example I've been giving my audience, and if you know differently, please say so. But one of the issues I've tracked is expansion of liquefied natural gas exports, which is actually over the course of decades could be a multi-trillion-dollar decision. During Joe Biden's 4 years, he issued an executive order in the early part of last year saying no expansion of LNG. Now, which I think was stupid. And the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, says he asked Biden about that last year, just a short time after he was supposed to have signed an executive order banning expansion of LNG exports. And Biden, according to Johnson, told him, yeah, I didn't do that. And he had, or he was said to have signed an executive order to that effect. So is it forgetful Joe who didn't remember signing a fairly consequential executive order? Or was it the fact that his staff decided to do it and they have no authority to do it, do they?
So you're exactly right. You think it's stupid. I think it's stupid. Even Joe Biden probably thinks it's stupid, which is why it's the perfect example of why you can't have staffers signing executive orders on behalf of the president that he doesn't know about, whether he forgot or doesn't know. That is the question here. I believe that a lot of these things that got done, you see the autopen, whether he even knew that what they were explaining to him as they said, you're going to sign an order on this, you're going to sign an order on that. Now, of course, he liked the pardons for his family because by pardoning his family, it was effectively pardoning himself. A lot of those criminal investigations led directly back to the big guy. And so I'm sure he was in favor of that, but that is a perfect example, Lars, of the types of things that he may not have known about. And if he didn't know, they absolutely ought to be null and void.
Now, Seamus, I got to ask you this, because whose job is it to prove that these were legitimate decisions made by Joe Biden? Because look, in the modern era, I could see saying, let's have an autopen. If the president happens to be in Europe on the day that a big piece of legislation passes and he's going to be there for a while, you want him to be able to say yes to that without having to get on a plane and fly halfway around the planet just to get back to sign a piece of paper. Okay, I understand that. But was there any documentation or any paper trail kept of the president? We called the president or communicated with him somehow and said, Mr. President, we have these 5 executive orders. We'd like your signature on them. Here's what they're about. And then documenting the fact that he actually made the decision. Because without that, should we just accept them as valid because you can't prove they're not?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tough situation. I can tell you exactly who they need to haul in front of a questioning committee, whether it's Congress or the Department of Justice. It's Neera, Tanden, these White House staffers and cabinet officials. It's Neera, Tanden, Susan Rice, Tony Blinken, and Jake Sullivan. They would absolutely know what happened. If they start pleading the fifth or start saying, I can't recall that, then we've got really big problems, and there absolutely needs to be special counsels and all kinds of investigations to get to the bottom of it. I can't say whether or not there is a paper trail. There ought to be, and if there isn't one, then it's a huge, huge black mark on the Biden administration and its record. I mean, this is kind of unacceptable that we don't know whether or not the President of the United States was making declarations as the President of the United States.
Yeah, or were those decisions, as a lot of us suspected, being made by somebody other than Joe Biden? Maybe somebody in the White House, former staffers of Barack Obama, or maybe even by Obama himself saying, yeah, go ahead and sign that thing. Joe will be on board for that. Well, in that case, the Constitution requires, at least with statutes, that they have to be presented to the president. And if they're not presented to the president, then they don't exist as laws because he never signed them. So, Seamus, I'll look forward to seeing what the Government Accountability Institute comes up with on this, because I suspect they didn't keep any kind of paper trail at all. Thanks for the time, by the way.
Thanks, Lars.
That is Seamus Bruner, who's Director of Research at the Government Accountability Institute.